an easier layout, navigation, mobile devices, more friendly for mobile devices. And so we put out an RFP for a website on April 8th, looking for vendors. We were lucky, we received 6 responses, which was more than I had expected. We received the responses. They were evaluated by a city's internal team that looked at all the proposals, evaluated the proposals, looked at their sample websites that they submitted, looked at the costs, looked at everything that we would need to, and then we came to a conclusion here. And get my slides got up. This was the criteria that we looked at when we evaluated all the proposals. You know, price obviously played a part, but it wasn't the most important thing. We really wanted something that would incorporate all the technological aspects that we were looking for. At the end of the analysis, a company called Civic Plus emerged as the highest ranking proposal. They have experience with government websites, accessible websites. They're headquartered in Manhattan, Kansas. They have over 10,000 customers, and many of those are located in Kansas, and they've been in business for over 25 years. Here's kind of I'm just looking at the cost breakdown. And the reason that some of these have ranges is because their proposals were a range of options. And so if you wanted, you know, the base, then it was this price. If you wanted to add on these other modules, then it was this price. So that's kind of how everything shook out. Civic Plus, it was not the most expensive or the least expensive. They were kind of right in the middle. Here's the final score of all the things. This is not just the cost, but this is everything that we were weighing the criteria on. And I think sometimes what gets lost in all these RFP analysis is what's in it for the residents of Ottawa. And so I just wanted to focus here on, we're looking for a better mobile experience. Probably more than half of websites are visited on mobile devices now. That's a shift that's taken place, you know, since we set up our current website. We're looking for easier navigation so that it takes fewer clicks to get where they want to go. Language translation is something that people have asked for in the last few years. They want their website translated into a different language when they're looking at it. The advanced search was something that we've really been focused on. When I go and search on a website, I want to find information that's inside of the files that are on that website, not just the names and metadata and stuff. I want to look inside of PDFs and see what matches. And that's what we're looking at with the Civic Plus proposal that will be possible on the Civic Plus website. And then, of course, ADA compliant features will ensure that all the residents can use the site effectively. And that's something that you really need a partner for, whether it's Civic Plus or somebody else, because those change and technology changes, and you have to have somebody that's updating those, you know, quarterly or at least a few times a year. And these are the strategic pillars that you've seen before and how a new website would align with a lot of the things that we're trying to do. And then so the financial considerations, this project was budgeted for $50,000 for the first year because that's going to include the building of the new website, migrating the data over, configuration training, all the things that go along with the project. And then each additional year, the estimate was $15,000 beyond that for hosting and managing the website. And so Civic Plus proposal was $28,942 for year one, and then the next year, $13,805. So it does fit into the project budget. And then, of course, the city attorney would look at any contracts before we sign them. And then I will answer any questions that you might have about the process, the proposal, or anything else.
So I guess I just need to ask, I know we've had it in-house in the past, and the reason we don't want to continue on with that is it getting too advanced for our capacity, or is it the market just getting changing so much that we can't handle?
I think that some of the things that we want to do, we have not been able to do internally, like the searching inside of the documents, and things have changed. When we initially set it up, Dropbox worked differently than it does now, and so they've slowly changed their process. So some of that's out of our control, and so we want to get it to a place where a vendor or has complete control over the product.
Well, I have had people say that they have difficult navigating through it, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it's people like me or who it is exactly. I've had a little trouble myself, I have to admit, but I can understand what you're saying. Are there any sample cities we can look at to see?
Yeah, in there, they have submitted 3
On page 10.
Kansas cities.
And actually,
They do Franklin County, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
well, and the one I was concerned about was, I was like, why is Manhattan not using it? And Manhattan's there. Manhattan does use it. So, I mean, that does make me
I
feel good
looked
that
that
like
up
they're
too.
home.
I
Yeah.
thought-
I'm like,
I thought I should check on that.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
I know when I was working at the county years ago, they did the same thing. We'd hosted the website previously, and they went through Civic Plus, and in that experience, that was a decade ago. A little more, but they were fantastic to work with, and I think they just redid the county website as well, and it looks great. And I think those things that you had hit on, some of that searching is a small thing. It seems like a really small thing, but as we're trying to like make information more available, I know I have a hard time searching through and trying to scour through if I'm remembering something from a previous agenda and I'm trying to remember exactly when it was. Searching through some of those things is sometimes, like you said, difficult because it just pulls up the metadata or the title of PDF, not what's actually in it. And then mobile, obviously, I think everyone in this room probably has a cell phone in their pocket or on their lap. And I think a lot of people use that modality to access the site instead of a laptop or a desktop.
Definitely.
Does our county go through them, or they go
Yeah.
through same our county?
Which I do think there's a benefit into us, to ours looking similar to theirs, because if citizens are, used to being able to navigate through one particular site, being able to navigate through the same site or through a similarly designed site is a bonus.
With 10,000 customers, that's nationwide, I say.
Yeah.
That's wow, big outfit.
Any other questions?
Been a lot of movement in websites in the time, yeah. I've been on hand. A lot.
And do we probably didn't look further out after year 2, but we're kind of assuming that cost will stay about the same, kind of incrementally increase, at a
That's
kind of
my
a pseudo standard
expectation.
rate.
I
for their
would say
hosting.
3 to 5%, just kind of as a guide,
Yeah.
would be a guess.
And it's important that we have compliance requirement for April of 26 to be ADA section 508 compliant. And our current website is not, and would require a substantial investment.
And how soon would this start if we agree to do this?
Oh, that's a good question. I did that in my notes. Start to finish on a website like this, you're looking at around 6 months.
In the year.
Do you know on the ongoing after the development kind of design is done in those years 2, 3, going forward, how much time or how many changes that are a limit, how many changes we're allowed to make, or if we have something we want to tweak? Is that almost ad hoc if we need to do things, or is that kind of built into that?
A lot of those changes we'll be able to do on our own, unless you're getting into some structural, complete revamp changes. And that's one of the exciting things, is that in the future, departments will be able to update the information on their own sections of the website, and so I think we'll have a more real-time data on there, because not everybody, more people will be able to make changes to what they have rights to make changes to. And so I think that'll be helpful.
Any further questions? How would we like to proceed?
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve item 11A on the agenda.
A second.
Any further discussion? May I have roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton?
Yes.
And Mayor Allen?
And I vote yes, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will next go on to item 11B.
2025 Teen Safety Academy and Fall Citizen Public Safety Academy.
Chief Weingartner will present on the Ottawa Police Department's new community education programs launching in 2025.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm happy to report to you today that the Police Department has accomplished another one of our community policing program initiatives with the creation of a Teen Safety Academy and a Public Safety Citizens Academy. So we have really strong programming already in place for youth in our community, mostly geared because of the DARE program towards elementary age or some of the younger kids. But then there's been a gap. Now, we do rely on the teens to help work at DARE camp after they've been to DARE camp, so we do include them in that, but that program is not specifically tailored and focused for them. And one of the feedbacks we get from people is asking, how can we as a police department, or how can we as parents teach our kids about what there is to know about law enforcement, how to interact with law enforcement, and certainly to our own benefit, if we can get some kids interested in a policing career earlier, then maybe we benefit on the backside of sending them to school, even if it's to our local Neosho County Community College or OU, and then keeping them here in the workforce based on their past experiences. We had some of these plans in place before COVID or right around the COVID time, and honestly put the brakes on it because of that. And then just couldn't get quite back to a point where we felt comfortable launching it, but we are there now, and we're pleased to report that we're starting it in July. So the programs are a component of our strategic plan to engage with the kids outside of school. We were really trying to get the notification out before school got out, but that was on us to be just a little bit late with that. So we got the word out, and this is gonna be a break between the end of school and DARE camp for our staff, where we can run the Teen Safety Academy. And what you'll see here in a few minutes is the curriculum kind of outline. And really, the Teen Academy is going to be a smaller version of what will be the more adult-oriented Fall Citizens Public Safety Academy. The Teen Academy is going to be for just 1 week, and we have a lot of information that we're going to pack in there. But then the Fall Academy, we'll have an opportunity to expand just a little bit more on that information. They offer many benefits to the community, both from law enforcement and our public, to enhance community engagement. And certainly we have a great opportunity and an audience to show what our crime prevention strategies. In fact, a lot of the things that we do from a crime prevention public education tied directly into what Director Sommer just presented to you, which is some of the website and the upgrades that Matt's been able to do for us that we'd love to just build upon and give our community information at their fingertip to be able to do that. Not only do we get to engage with the kids, but we will get out of the program some ambassadors who have a better understanding, a more robust understanding of how the police department works. And we do that work kind of through our motto, which is protect and serve with duty, honor, integrity, and trust. So when you launch a new program, at times, cost is always an issue. And we're very fortunate in our community that for DARE Camp, we receive a Gibson Family Foundation grant disbursement that pays now a portion of DARE Camp. When we first got that program, it paid for all of DARE Camp, but it does no longer do that. So we're always looking out through the Ottawa Police Foundation for some funds to help support that and take that burden back off the taxpayer while still trying to provide those. We've been able to do that again with this through some generous donations already and some commitments, and we are applying for 2 community grants to help further support for this. Those will go both toward the Teen Academy and the Fall Academy. We did receive our first sponsorship from Kansas State Bank, who is gonna help us and funding for the t-shirts and some of the uniforms that we're gonna issue for the academies. We're very thankful for receiving that. We're also with the Teen Academy, gonna provide a healthy lunch each day. And we have 2 sponsors for lunches already, and we'll have I have no problem, no doubt we'll have no problem getting those other days filled for that as well. We will have all of the participants, because we will be doing some scenario-based training, although we'll keep it very safe. a liability release. We already do that with people who come and do a public ride along with us. So if a citizen comes in to ride with an officer, they'll be signing that same type of liability release. We certainly want to keep everyone safe. But in all honesty, sometimes in our line of work, we can't predict the calls that's gonna come, but we want to do that while still keeping people as safe as possible. I don't need any formal action, from the commission tonight, but this is definitely, information they were looking forward to sharing with you. And so exciting to make that announcement, for the public. We did launch the online registration, just the other day, so, with the packet and information that came out last week to make the announcement, we had our, media release scheduled to go out after the release of the information, the packet for you all. And then Monday morning, we were interviewed on COFO to kind of have another little public outreach with Brad and COFO. And then we got the online registration portal set up and we limited the first teen academy to 12. We want to make sure we know what we're doing and make it a really good experience before we expand it, just like we did with Dare Camp all those years. And a day and a half, we're already at 10 of 12 spots. So we will have a full complement and waiting list, I'm sure. And please, if anyone is interested or has questions, they can contact us and ask, and we will keep a few names on an eligibility list in case anyone has to back out. But with that, I would stand for any questions that you might have. And hopefully, given your time and time commitments, that maybe some of you, either as your roles as city commissioners, or maybe if you are off, to consider applying for that Fall Citizens Public Safety Academy and kind of getting to see a little bit more than you already know about us.
Is there for either of these kind of a tuition or a payment that you have to make for the teen academy?
No.
Or those? Okay.
Free. That's where the grants and sponsorship will come in.
Any other questions? Very good. It sounds great. I look forward to seeing pictures and stopping by, maybe visiting.
The commission and city government will have a role in the Fall Academy for sure. The teen one, we can't, probably might not be able to get you in this time, but yeah, you'll definitely have a space to come and talk to people at the fall one for sure.
Very good.
Yeah,
You
thank
can
you.
volunteer for the anatomy of a traffic stop if you would like.
I could
They
send
can
my
pull you
son.
over.
Yeah, I might have my son pulled
There
over
you
again.
go.
We can do that. He's good at it.
I've got sons that have been through the same thing. so
Yeah.
I've been there too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Volunteer.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
We will go on to item 11C.
Review of 2026 operating budget for water fund.
The proposed 2026 operating budget will be presented for discussion and consensus, and we have Director Sneathen and Director Landis presenting. You can saw you guys last week.
Yeah. No.
Well, get there, because you're gonna see us a lot more, maybe not Director Sneathen after this, he's breathing a sigh of relief because this is his last time to be up here for a little while anyway. So, this
He
afternoon,
likes us.
he does. This afternoon's conversation is about the water utility and the wastewater utility, and last week we started our budget review with electric and stormwater. And our presentation format has just been to review all of the information that was in the packet for you in much greater detail in the packet for you, and that's available online. But to review that at a higher level and be able to answer any questions that you have, or if there's things we can't answer, bring that information back to you later. The water utility has several purposes, but the most important are clean, safe drinking water, reliable service, and our utility sustainability. Our utility rate structure is segregated into multiple categories, and here's an example. I don't expect you to read all of those, but our most recent rate resolution was put in place in 2023. So we are into the middle of that 5-year rate increase structure, and that will end at the end of 2027. So the numbers that you see in here include any revenue rate increases through 27, but then they level out beyond there. And you'll see kind of what the impact of that might be. We do have 4,000 760 residential and 627 commercial customers here. And we actually have the breakdown if you would like them by rural and urban, but I think it's important to understand kind of what that ratio is between residential and commercial. And that is important, because of how we charge for water. And of course, then when we get into wastewater, how we charge there is based on how they're structured in the water fund as well. This slide is our review of the financials for the water fund. I think the important part to the takeaway here is that our charges for service, of course, you can see through 2027. You don't necessarily see on this slide, but you will on the next, what happens after those revenues tend to level off, but your expenditures continue to increase. And as you know, with every utility, any operation where you don't control the cost of everything, you have operational increases, and you can see that where your expenditures are going up, and they do outweigh your revenues even over the next couple of years. Our declining fund balance is obviously something that we are concerned about. We've talked to you about that the last couple of years, and we've really maybe scaled back some of those capital projects that we could have been doing. Of course, we would have loved to be able to do a lot of them all at one time or sooner rather than later, but in our efforts in our capital improvement plan that we showed you, a couple of large projects that needed to be done over the next several years, over the next 5 years even. And because of the declining fund balance, we'll likely go back and reschedule some of those to make sure that it's that we're comfortable with where that ending fund balance is. And in a utility, $260,000 at the end of the year is really not enough for an emergency. It's not enough to be able to cover something that could happen in a really large utility, and we want to be able to maintain and continue that service. So we need to make some adjustments overall.
While you're on that page, today, you see the delinquency, $163,000, and we look at last week, we were talking 800, we're about $1 million plus right now in total delinquencies on our utilities, right?
Yes.
And sometime I would just like to hear a proposal, Mr. Taylor mentioned, you gotta address this somehow, whether it be a credit agency that buys receivables, delinquent accounts, or cost share. Maybe I've dealt with some, they go 50-50. If they collect somebody, they each get half of it if they're able to collect them. So sometime I'd like to see some proposal, and I don't know if Sarah wants to add to that or not, but it's your.
I would agree with you.
That was one of our takeaways from last week's conversation, and we did make note to bring that back to you. It's something we've been considering or talking about internally for even the last couple of years. There are companies out there that even go so far as to take the legal action, if at all necessary, after a certain period of time to collect on those accounts, and then return that back to us, just minus a percentage or minus a fee for those collections. And so there are a couple of companies out there that are used by several municipal utilities.
And I guess privacy issues, I don't know if our counselor would get involved in that too, best, but if we divulge people's private information for them to have to collect on, I assume that's all legitimate, how we work that out.
We'll bring all of that back to you when we make a proposal.
I know we even have a company here in town that buys receivables and collect on those things, and so I don't know how their success rate would be, but if they were, it doesn't matter what they buy them from us, we don't care if their success rate, I guess, but the price would be what I would wonder what they would pay for $1 million worth of receivables. Past dues. Good, thank you.
This is a little bit different look at our fund balance projections, and a couple of notes there. Talked about the number of customers, 5,400 customers, and that's increased by 108 customers over the last 4 years. That our revenues are not covering our, they are covering our operational costs, but when you start adding in the capital projects, the replacement of mains, all of those that are those types of projects that we have to be able to do over time, that is where it starts not being able to cover those costs. And those are only, quite frankly, 100 to 150,000 at a time. But when you're barely covering the operating costs, that's what tends to ratchet down your fund balance overall. Our current rate increases end in 2027, and then we are, Director Sneeden has reviewed our tap fees and done some analysis there. We'll be bringing some of that information to you over the next week or two. And then also, we know that we need to review our wholesale contracts. So really just taking a whole big picture look at this utility and try to iron out how exactly we can put this back on right track.
We do sell water, don't we, to, is it Princeton or Richmond? Who do we sell water to? Yeah,
The city of Princeton, along with 3 other rural water districts.
Okay, and I guess we got that pricing structured good now where we were at one time, I think we were kind of losing money on that.
That's where we're gonna take a deep dive, look into it. Yes, here. Currently, we are. Yes.
All right, thank you.
And Director Sneathan, I know on the first page you had mentioned, you know, the fewer breaks, fewer leaks, stuff like that, that's great. With the new water tower, the switch is flipped and it is live, do we foresee, you know, with the increased pressure and some of that stuff, potential when that kind of comes on as well for the system kind of as a whole and other water mains that may have been identified?
We've had conversations with staff, distribution staff, and our engineer that has worked on the project with us. They feel that it'll be very minimal to little disruption. Obviously, we won't know until that happens, but luckily with the ability to ramp down our pumps, where we don't have that ability now, it's just all or nothing. We will be able to take it slow up and we will take it in stages. Like, we won't fill it all the way and then wait
Open
for
the gates,
the
yeah.
burst out, you know, we'll go in layers and kind of see what that does with the system pressure and see how our lines take care of it. Yeah, but we're not anticipating really any major issues with it.
Thank you.
This is our strategic pillars and part of our process that we've put in place and as a reaction to and a documentation of the commission's goals and objectives that we've discussed over the last several months and even into last year. And this is just, I think I mentioned last week, you'll see this continuously so that we can start making sure that people understand what this looks like. And it really plays into how we put together that capital improvement program. And you'll notice in your budget highlights for each one of these funds and divisions that they've tied those improvements back to one of these pillars on this previous screen. Oops, sorry about that. And so when we start looking at those, we are understanding how this ties to our bigger, broader goal for the city overall. The goals. This is just a copy of what you've already seen earlier. In April, we reviewed our capital improvement program. This is what I mentioned earlier, is that we will take a really hard look at what the importance and priority of these projects are, whether or not there are smaller projects that need to be done first, if any of these need to move out to future years, which we can still do, of course. We don't have this in place yet, but if you recall, when we discussed our CIP overall, any and all projects that are in there can move between years just based on priority and available funding. And so this is where we started our conversation, and we'll definitely take a better look at this. These are some of the budget highlights. They're indicated in your packet. There's something that we've put together based on, you should be able to find these relatively easy within those line items that we've provided to you in the packet. If I just pick out a few of them here and jump in anywhere. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
the $200,000 in 2026 proposed budget, the $200,000 south sludge pond dredging. That is a continuation of the sludge dredging project that we just had approved from you all here recently. It will go out probably about the same time next year as it did this year. The actual work on the north one will not start until after harvest. So we've got some time to really get things under control and ready and prepared for that. And then another one is the $15,000 stair design and replacement. As you know, the water treatment plant was built from 78 to 80. So, and a lot of the original stairs are there. And in our water treatment evaluation, it was noted that all of our stairs need to be updated and replaced to meet whether it's new code or tread pattern or those such things. So yeah, it's a low hanging fruit, mind you, because of the fund balance. we are taking note what was listed in that evaluation and making changes already currently.
And the price difference between north and south sludging is inflation or size?
Yes.
Yeah. And, okay.
Just, we truly were not anticipating the cost of the north sludge being as much as it was. So we had to prepare for a little bit of an increase even so for next year.
Good.
On the proposed mower purchase, is that not something that can be done in combination with, other departments that purchase mowers?
Yes.
I might make one other note that is, this was not actually in the packet, but I added to the slide because I think it's an important point here is that we have talked about for the last 10+ years, probably the replacement of our current meters with AMI and smart technology. And on the electric side, we've been able to move ahead there. On the water side, we have not been able to move ahead as quickly because of the fund balance in this utility. And in what we've provided here to you through 2027, we've taken that out. You do see an amount in there for meter purchases, but those are for the meters that we have to be able to purchase to put in for brand new development for those properties that don't have a meter, or for those that go down or go out that we have to replace in order to keep them functional. So we have not included in there any large dollar amount to continue that replacement program. We have toyed with a lot of different ideas on how we could get that done, and nothing has really come to make that easy with the fund balance that's in here right now. So we're gonna have to work that into our plan. That is really important, especially on the water side. I don't want to downgrade the importance of the replacement program, but for now, we're moving that back to just the essentials. The outstanding debt for this utility fund, there is a 2000A, which was the construction of the Northeast Water Tower, 2014A, which was the 16-inch water transmission line. Those pay off in 2029 and 2030. And then we do have a 2021A, which was the new cooling tower and a lease purchase currently with Oak Star Bank to I apologize. I actually think that those got merged together, and that's not correct. I'll make sure that we get that updated on that last point. We're here to answer any questions that you have. What we've presented to you is a 2025 revised budget, 26 proposed budget, and a 27 projected budget. The only thing that we're really putting into place today, or this cycle, is the 2026 proposed budget. That's what so we'll be submitting to the state, but the 25 revised is important because that's what we've updated based on what we know today about this year's financials and activity, and 26 is what we're looking forward to being our proposed budget for 26 and 27. It's just an outlook here.
Just a question on water production beneath contractual services. I see machine and equipment repair kind of jumped from 32,000 to 70,000 and then kind of back down. Are we having some kind of current repairs that are upcoming that are, higher dollar amount than we typically expect annually?
A lot of that is our backwash pump this year for the equipment repair services and our annual maintenance and one of our thorough inspections of all of our pumps that we have at our river lift and our low lift pump station. And the contractuals, KDHE just recently increased their fees, not substantially, but enough to where we've kind of had to make some adjustments on our contractual side of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think great, going down to zero is concerning. I guess that's why we're here discussing it before he gets to that point, that it looks like the 2030, 2029.
Yes.
And as Director Landis mentioned, the CIP projects, we will take a deep dive into as you can see in your packet, there's an allocation for a proposal for $40,000 in extra piping on our water distribution side. We feel that is probably gonna be a higher priority than the 2026 capital improvement project. It affects a lot more of our community members, than a 19th Street project does. Not that the 19th Street isn't important, but I guess you get more bang for your buck in the fact that we can get more line replaced in different areas of town that need it sooner.
While you're talking about that particular one on 19th Street, I guess I was thinking that a new development, it'd be a newer line, but it must be an old line.
It is, yeah, it's old cast iron line, yeah, and it's had major breaks, time after time, kind of pieced together with wraps. Yeah.
Which works.
Well, true.
And obviously not something that I would say you can control, but just kind of noting on here, health insurance in 2024 actual was 74,000. We're proposing 150. So kind of just the increased costs for keeping our employees and providing healthcare and doing that stuff is substantial, to say the least, over the past 2 years.
And something we have to keep in mind there is that when we're budgeting for any of these things, you have to budget, let's just choose
Right.
insurance. We don't know what any of our employees are gonna choose, what package they're gonna choose for that upcoming year. So we do budget higher for those types of expenses. And, also we're working off of estimates for health insurance increases over, based on what we know and based on what they've been able to tell us that they think could happen. And so that's the difference between budgeting for it and then what you actually see in your actuals for, say, a previous year, or what you might see in the adopted budget versus the revised budget for some of those line items. As we're planning ahead, but we don't know everything yet. And then when we get to that, then we are able to kind of revise back and see where we actually stand. One other thing, last week I failed to mention that in these budgets, I have taken out any of the undesignated capital outlay lines so that it's easier for you to see what that fund balance looks like without having to add numbers together and having to do mental math while you're looking at the overall health of the fund balance. But when we get around to putting together the actual final state budget form, we'll take some of those dollars and put them back in there so that you do have the budget authority for those emergencies, those things that come up that you may have to be able to tackle without needing to do an amended budget process to make that happen. But we did take them out just for our initial conversation. So it's much easier for you to be able to see what that fund balance looks like over time.
Director Landis, the Northeast Water Tower, the TIF project, what project was that?
That's the K68 TIF, and I actually just made a note to check in on that and see if there was some ability to be able to use some of those TIF funds to be able to help pay against that debt. I'm not actually certain that there is, given that the way that that's structured and that there are no active projects within that TIF district right now. But there are funds that have accrued over time, and so that's why I want to make sure that we check in with bond counsel to see if it can or cannot be used towards that.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
I think as part of our recommendation, we asked that we've had some feedback and some, are we in a position where there's more information that you need? Or do you kind of agree with how we're moving ahead, maybe making some slight adjustments as we come into the next few weeks when we bring this back to you as a final look for adoption in September? Is there anything major that stands out that you want us to dig into other than the things that we've mentioned?
I think just the things that we've mentioned for me.
Yeah, I guess I would say, and just a kind of another question on distribution, line construction materials. It looks like for 2026, that includes that $40,000 for pipe. Because it went from 75 for
Yeah,
20.
and that's what,
Is that 40?
yep, it's the combination of the
Okay.
two. Yep.
I think only kind of feedback I would have is maybe on this the highlight page.
Mhm.
If we could have essentially where that would be, so then if I find it somewhere else,
Mhm.
I kind of already know that, okay, that's what that 40 increase is, it's this specific project.
Okay,
Oh, specific lines.
Yeah, if it, we say, or at least what fund, you know, that it's coming out of, what, 5-303, you know.
Yeah, and originally, those costs were taken out of the capital expenses lines
Mhm.
in the 700s. I believe it's 715 or 710. We have moved those into operational just to keep better track and not get confused with our capital improvement.
because essentially their inventory and our people doing the work as
Yes,
opposed
yeah.
to a planned project where it's, you know, a full project.
Any final questions or direction? Okay, we will move on to item 11D.
Review of 2026 operating budget for wastewater fund.
The proposed 2026 operating budget will be presented for discussion and consensus. And we have the same folks.
We're here. Thank you. So our wastewater utility, also called water reclamation. So if you see some of the materials in the packet are labeled a little differently than our slides are in here, just to make sure that we all understand it's the same utility. So it's called wastewater, it's called sewer, it's called water reclamation. So just for those that don't hear it on a daily basis. Our purpose, our key purposes here for wastewater, water reclamation is sanitation, water reclamation, and to protect the public health. Our wastewater utility rate structure was also put in place in 2023. What's reflected on this slide is the 2026 rates. And wastewater rates are constructed a little bit differently in that we use a winter average water usage to be able to establish for residential what that cost is going to be every month going forward from April until the next March. And so we do use your average of the December, January, February, and March usage, or billed usage for those months. And for commercial, it's actually a related charge. So whatever you use in water all year round is what you pay in wastewater monthly. So there's a related use between water and wastewater. The rates are really straightforward for this. So there's not a lot of calculation here between different categories. And for our total customers, we have 4,643 residential customers and 554 commercial customers. In a look overall at our financial summary here, you do kind of see the same theme in that as we've started to ramp up additional capital improvement or maintenance of our utility overall, you do see a slightly declining fund balance. It is in a much better position, obviously, than the water fund is. But as you will note, our expenditures still do begin to outweigh our revenues. Even in those years where we have the current rate increases in place. Part of that is because we have some projects, some additional expenses that are happening in those years, like 2025, but there's nothing major, no major capital improvements in here that it's really eating into that fund balance. So a lot of this is just regular operational costs at this point. We do have some major projects that are coming up in our capital improvement program, or they've been deferred at this point because they're large enough that the utility itself cannot make the payment or wouldn't be able to make the payment going forward, even if those are in the out 29 and 30. This is a very stable charges for service as you bring on and lose water customers, you bring on and lose the same wastewater revenue. There's really not a lot there for discussion. If you look at the fund balance history over time, you just start to see around 25 and 26 that as your expenditures go up, your fund balance starts to dip down. We've talked about with the other two funds that we have that minimum, the fund balance policy minimum, which is 20% of your expenditures that we like to use as a baseline for trying to make sure that we're above that. And as you see, as we get out to 2030, it starts to dip below that. That is outside of the current rate structure, so that rate structure ends in 2027. And as we talk about some of those really large major capital projects that need to happen in the future, we'll have to discuss how we make sure that those can get done just with the fund balances that are available. We do, total, we have 5,197 customers. That's increased by just over 2% since 2021, with 120 customers coming online. Again, this is the strategic pillars, and these were used to create your capital improvement plan that was brought in April, and then also tied to the budget highlights, which are noted here. Those pillars aren't noted here on the slide. They are noted in your packet material, though. There's a pretty extensive list of budget highlights, both for 25, 26, and 27, as well as pretty in-depth narratives for every one of the divisions within each one of the funds. Do you want to note?
Yeah, a couple of the highlights. The revised budget of 2025 is part of a Pin Oak lift station replacement that the commission approved last year. Levi and his crew actually toured Smith and Loveless today and put their eyes on our station. It is ready to ship. So we will be getting a timeline for that, and we'll be taking pictures and drone video and all that good stuff for that project. It's going to be placed in a good time where we don't have all the middle school traffic along that road on 13th Street. So the timing could have been better. It could have been spring break and a little less rain, but hey, we'll make it work. And then in 2026, the $130,000 VFD upgrade, it boosts energy efficiency and regulatory compliance support. And then a $60,000 river lift on-site generator in 2027 is on the horizon of a project that we want to get done. Right now, staff during any kind of outage have to run around their mobile generator to multiple locations to try to get things pumped out. And where it pumps it to is the river, and we don't have an on-site generator at that station to where we want to.
There's replacement right here, you're talking.
Yeah, that's the PLC replacement. Yep, that's this year. Yep.
Well, that's something too, a lot of people don't realize, and the thing you mentioned, people with that it costs more to treat wastewater going in the river than it does to treat water, drinking water coming in. I think when people see their bills, they've got to realize that, yeah, it costs more for us to do that, and it's required. We can't just let it go. We got to treat it, and so it's between the parallel. For sure. We just kind of rent the water coming here and pass it on, and it goes.
We do have outstanding debt in our wastewater fund as well. Our 2021A was as a refund and refinance of our original KDHE loan project, which was some sewer improvements related to the East Side Interceptor. And then we also have a lease purchase of the CCTV van, the camera van that we use. And that pays off in 2028. The 2021A pays off in 2034. I might note, last week you asked a question about our debt ceiling and about future projects. We did reach out to our financial advisor. They are putting together a new updated debt ceiling information for us. And when we discuss our debt service fund, we'll bring all of that back. A kind of a new debt book with those updated numbers that you have all of that.
Okay, thank you. Do you know on like the lease purchase, instead, not the bonds, is there any prepayment penalty on stuff like that? I just kind of looking quick math, we've paid, if it started in 2018, 174, right at 175,000 of it. And principal's dropped 110. And so I know sometimes on smaller ones like that, where we could potentially just pay it off and be done and save 60K over the next 4 years.
Your lease purchase,
Yeah, are we,
usually they don't allow that.
okay. Without like a penalty for, yeah,
We can
And-
do the math.
Yeah, and oftentimes, now, I don't know, just off the top of my head, but oftentimes, and especially maybe right now and over the last couple of years or year or more, we've been able to invest those dollars at a higher rate than what we're paying in interest on that same lease. But to your point, you know, and I think over the last couple of years, we've talked about, hey, when we have a laundry list of vehicles and equipment that need to be purchased, what is the balancing act between being able to purchase it now and what is the need and having to pay interest versus, which is basically kicking the can down the road on the payments that are gonna come back and being able to marry that with, you know, the funds that are available right then. So, at that time, that was a large enough purchase that they didn't feel comfortable having that, cash,
Yeah.
the cash going out to purchase that, at the time, so. But we can certainly look into all of our debt, we try to look at and see if there's any opportunity for payment off early.
Thank you.
Again, with the wastewater utility, we're happy to answer any questions you have, and would, just look for any feedback or consensus so that we know how to move ahead with this utility.
Director Sneeden, kind of going back to the last presentation, you know, it had that we treat over 570 million gallons a year, which is about 1.56 a day. And we treat about 1 million a day. I mean, that 560,000 gallons kind of between what we clean goes out and what we take back. Do you kind of know, I mean, on that, that's a lot of glasses of water. I mean, there's irrigating, there's other types of things that people do, but is that kind of the assumption for where, I guess, in that, between those two spots where that might be going?
Yes.
Alright.
Yeah, the consumption side of it.
Yeah, so it's
The irrigation, yeah.
in the winter, probably lower disparity between those two numbers,
yeah.
and the summer goes much
Yeah,
higher.
we're neck and neck in the winter time and the colder months, yep, for sure. And also, they may be hiring us some because of infill and infiltration.
Yeah.
So all that inflow is coming in when our service lines are cracked and coming in, so that groundwater goes into that line, then they still have to treat it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, direction?
Get on this plant replacement, I wanted that last, it was something years and years down. Or another replacement or what?
The PLC replacement, so the way I like to look at a PLC is the brain of the process. It tells when to turn things on and when to shut things off, where we're at in the process. It speeds up, slows down. It works in tandem with the VFD upgrades that's gonna be proposed in 26. The PLC, we are in plans of getting this taken care of this year. And it will be taken care of this year through one of our vendors, our SCADA vendor. Is that accurate to say, Levi?
There hasn't been any updates to the DLC since 2004, since it was built. So if you think about the technology advancements that you carried in your pocket as a cell phone in 2004.
Yeah.
So we have the desktop that we can hear.
And Windows XP.
Mine's a 2003, actually. No problem. That's kind of what I wonder if it was just that old, I mean, it's probably 20 plus years, so yeah.
Any other questions? I think we're done. Thank
you all.
you.
Thank you.
We will now move on to item 11E.
Consider request from Lightfield Energy.
We have City Attorney Finch presenting on that.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Pass around a request we received yesterday from Lightfield Energy. Lightfield is currently under contract to purchase Proximity Park. And we are coming up on the first milestone in that contract, the end of the due diligence period, and then the beginning of the entitlement period. And this request is asking that due diligence period be extended. I have asked Andy Talbert from Lightfield to be here virtually today to talk you through their request, and then happy to take any questions that you may have. So, is Andy on?
Looks like it.
All right.
Yeah.
Andy, can you hear?
I can hear you guys. I can't see myself, so I don't know if you can see me or not, but I am here.
So,
There we go. There we go. Okay, now I can see myself. Yeah, no, I appreciate everybody's time on the commission. Wanted to just be available, obviously, to kind of talk you through kind of the process of what's been happening over the last number of months on this project specifically. We've made great progress. We've put it in front of all the various kind of folks that we thought would potentially be a fit from the hyperscale community all the way down to like the colo community when it comes to technology campuses or data centers specifically. The complexity that we're kind of running into, which we knew there would be complexity here because we're attempting to do something that is significantly innovative in the sense that we're utilizing a strategy here that's called behind the meter, where we would actually be taking and doing some what's called cogeneration or generation of power on the site itself. We knew that there would be a challenge in kind of just making sure that that was understood by kind of all the parties in terms of the end user piece of it. One of the things that kind of added to that, though, has been that recently there was in the Kansas legislature a bill that was effectively passed that excluded behind the meter very specifically in some way. So we've had to kind of reassure our clients and the folks that we work with who are the actual data center operators themselves that that's not going to be detrimental and that there's a work through ultimately or workaround to that. So in conversations, I think with the city and with you all, our intent here is to effectively push out the due diligence or the entitlement period by 180 days and then remove 180 days on the back end to close. So we had a 270-day period after this ultimately. So we're willing to kind of be equal in that trade-off, if you will. But that allows us to continue the work that we're doing right now in kind of not just exploration, but really trying to figure out what that exact right fit would be for Proximity Park to give it its highest best use ultimately. So that's the intent here. We're still committed to the project. It's just kind of candidly, it's added some complexity to it. There are kind of three things that I think we've had to kind of throughout this process try to fit in terms of everything. We knew behind the meter would candidly be the one that would be very, very challenging. It's challenging just across the industry. I mean, if you look at it, all of these various types of campuses are really struggling to kind of find the amount of power that's required for them. And candidly, that amount of power is also increasing at a very rapid rate in the sense of just the technologies themselves are changing so much faster than they normally would in a typical real estate deal or real estate development deal that would be industrial. The piece around Kansas is the one that we hadn't quite anticipated, where I think, again, the perception of those end clients or those end users that either Kansas is going to be good or not good to work with, candidly, that was damaged in some way, I think, with behind the meter specifically being excluded from the bill that took place through the legislature in that regard. Again, I think we have workarounds to that. It's just been kind of making sure that we can nuance that with our folks and ultimately, again, get to an outcome that we all want, which is that we're able to build a technology campus here on Proximity Park.
Thank you for that. So essentially what you're asking for, as I understand it, instead of 180 days of due diligence and then 270 days beyond that, we're looking at 360 days of due diligence and then 90 days after that. So the math is the same. It just looks a little different. It's just rearranged a little different. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the entitlement period, which is what we've been in, we anticipated that we would probably need around 6 months or so for that. This has kind of just extended that timeline where we need that additional time to ultimately be able to kind of pull all the details together around this. It is very much spinning a lot of different plates, and I know you guys have visibility to this as well. But when you look at the complexity of, we're attempting to do the real estate piece of this development, but we're also attempting to do the power piece, and they kind of have to happen in parallel in a very real way. The other thing that we're just seeing is the requirements around kind of where folks want these deals to be in terms of how much power or how much upside of power they want to have has just increased a lot over the last few months, even as we've been working on Proximity Park specifically. So yeah, the idea would not be to move the end date. It would be to move the process here to be able to kind of give us the additional time to get these kind of boxes checked, if you will, run every path down that we possibly can to be able to make sure that we have the best fit to be able to move forward.
Thank you.
So what he just kind of stated very matter of factly, the request is not to extend the contract duration not to, reduce the additional time off market. Everything's remaining the same, and we're still looking at a December 19th, 2025 kind of end of term date for this original agreement. So the only thing that's been shifted is we had broken up the due diligence period into 2 phases, and we're lengthening the first phase and shortening by that same amount that it's been lengthened in phase 1. We're shortening phase 2 by 9.
The only clarification I would add, commissioners, is it's about 90 days past December 19th,
Right.
because it was 180 plus 270, which has you at about 450 days.
So that put us into March of 26.
It will still be 450 days under the
Okay.
request made by Lightfield to you.
Yeah.
The other thing that changes with this is that in that first 180-day period, the earnest money paid down on the contract was refundable if the purchaser backed out of the deal. By extending that due diligence period under this request, it would remain refundable if for some reason this project is not feasible for the developer. So through the date that the city manager said, through the December date this year, that earnest money would be refundable. That is the purchaser's money. That's not the city's money. And so the contract kind of broke up the 2 periods into due diligence activities around whether the project is feasible. And then if it is feasible, the second phase is, can we get all the platting and permitting that we need? Because Lightfield has been working with the city so well, we do have a lot of the platting and permitting questions answered. But the feasibility question really remains following the legislature's activity. I believe that's what Andy's telling you. And so we really are kind of still in that first phase according to Lightfield, and that's the basis of the request before you today. But it does not increase the time that the property is off the market.
Well, Andy, as Mike Skidmore, I appreciate your persistence. Anytime, seeing like any kind of contract, there's always a hiccup somewhere. You just have just what it's gonna be. I
Certainly.
apologize to our state for trying to put a to this thing, but I appreciate your persistence, not throwing your hands up and giving up. So thank you for that.
We appreciate that. We understand it's part of kind of the development process, and I think you all were as surprised as we were, so.
City Attorney Finch, could you real quick, kind of just hit on, for people who aren't aware, what is a due diligence period? What are these kind of periods of time in a contract? What are they meant for, kind of specifically in real estate?
Sure. Probably the one that most people are familiar with is when you have a contract to purchase a home. And you'll have an inspection period, a period where you can hire a home inspector, or if you have a friend who's a contractor, or if you're Andy, you go out and you say, okay, does the furnace work? Is the pipes leaking? Is the roof in good shape? Does the masonry need to be tuck pointed? And get all answers to all those questions and satisfy yourself that the property is in good condition. That's all part of due diligence on a commercial level too, except that you get into extra things like phase 1 and phase 2 environmental studies. And is there pollution on the site? Are there hazardous materials? Are there floodplain issues? And can we build what we want to build on the site? Is there enough developable land for what we want to do? Are there any easements that we weren't aware of that for other third parties that may come into play? Are there any leases on the land? And then finally, once you know that you can build, what method, what way do we have to build them? What do your building codes require? Do you have a planning overlay district like you have in Proximity Park, so that what comes in there looks good and adds value to the community? So all of those things are part of due diligence. And when you have a commercial operation, you have a whole nother layer about, can we be profitable? If we meet all these requirements, can we still be profitable and make money by locating our facility here in Ottawa, Kansas, or Gardner or Hayes? And so that is all part of that due diligence under the contract. Is the site suitable? Does the site work? Is it feasible to put our operation here? And in this case, part of that feasibility is who will be locating their computing power in these data centers if they're located in Proximity Park. And that's the question I think that still remains in the due diligence phase. And Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's, given the change that the legislature made, who is still interested? How feasible is the project based on state legislation, not anything to do with the site or anything here local?
No, it's 100% correct. Yeah. So effectively think of it as it's a perception thing as much as anything else, right? I think, you know, we like the site works, we like Ottawa, obviously, it's been a great, you know, working relationship up to this point. That's why we are, I think, so doggedly determined to try to, you know, make the right project happen here. It's just at the state level, the state is effectively signified by that legislation that they're not real excited about behind the meter power solutions, and they're therefore excluding them, calling it out by name effectively, the type of power solution that we're effectively working on here, from the incentive packet that the state offers, if you will. So, you know, there are workarounds, but it would be, you know, like anything else, it's much easier to kind of take the off the shelf than to have to go, you know, kind of create your own bespoke solution around this type of thing. I think, again, the other piece that I will really just try to be very candid and transparent in terms of all this. The size and scale of these projects is growing so much faster than people's ability to go develop them, and also people's ability to go find, procure, or even develop new power. So specifically because of that, our project, which we find in our world to be a very large project, as does Ottawa, in the whole scheme of it, for a hyperscale type company to commit to Ottawa, they're really not just committing to Ottawa in this project, they're also committing to the state of Kansas to say, could we build 5 more of these? And so the signal that Kansas is not that excited about that was just candidly, it was not a welcome signal at the time, when we were kind of in the middle of a lot of conversations with the folks who were really kind of selling them again on Ottawa and Kansas and behind the meter, and the Kansas piece, you know, appeared to be a little bit less exciting all of a sudden. So I think it's workable, but it just puts us in a position where, to the point made earlier, we wanted to be through this process in the 6 months, and we're just not. So we have to kind of just push that out a bit. So.
I think it's important to note that this is all within context of the grid, which is part of why you may remember that we did kind of a crawl, walk, run description of the grid and its connectivity and how all of these inputs that go into it. But Kansas also has, is one state that's involved in our SPP, our Southwest Power Pool area. That also includes Nebraska and South Dakota, and we're the only 3 states that prohibit this third party behind the meter kind of approach that Andy is highlighting here. While Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, North Dakota, and Texas all allow it in some fashion, and so that's why things were moving, kind of that hiccup when this occurred. And then couple that with the fact that we've got a 36+ month window for a study time once we know what all of those power inputs are going to be. And then if there are no delays, you're looking at about a 5-year construction window that has multiple layers of permitting and regulations that also have to go through it, which includes, not only the SPP that we're talking about, but FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, but then also every state with which the grid enhancements or upgrades may need to be built out, with which that's passing through. And so it is a very complex situation, and it's one that our current national energy structure is not prepared for, both from how do we generate power, and then how do we get the power from the generators to not only the places that need to consume the power, but all of us in our homes and businesses and everything that entails. So we have to be very diligent with where and how we step, because once we start submitting these AQ requests, that's when the clock really kind of starts ticking. And if we want to make any changes after that, it becomes very costly.
Well, for something that'll be around here for 30, 40, maybe 50 years, maybe 6 months really isn't much time to consider. And so I'll make the motion that we approve the extension of this contract by according to our attorney to be drawn up, and we proceed with what we've got with Lightfield Energy.
I'll second.
Commissioners, if I could just add a conceptual amendment for you, it would be to authorize the city manager and city attorney to execute an extension.
Yeah, what he said. Get that, Melissa.
I'll second.
Yeah.
That makes it easy.
May I have roll call vote, please?
How do you vote, Commissioner Taylor?
Yes.
Commissioner Cotton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
And Mayor Allen?
And I vote yes, motion carries. Thank you for joining us today, Andy.
Thanks.
Tell Billy hi.
I will. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. We'll get back to work now.
Right.
We will move on to comments by our city manager.
Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, we'll just kind of give you a brief rundown of some activities going on through our organization, our community, and the services that we provide. Everyone may be aware that we have lane restrictions on Main Street from just north of 15th south to 17th. And what you're seeing here is pictures that were taken yesterday and are on our Facebook and social media page, including a live drone video from above that shows this actually in process with them feeding the line through the hole. And I want to also just point out that the depth at which we're dealing with here, and to say that things are moving smoothly, and that we are continuing to lay this 8-inch water main. And we had previously last week with city employees and Right Tree Service with the boring had essentially cleared a 10-inch hole for the 8-inch pipe to flow through. And so this would be phase one that you're seeing here, with the second phase being a 12-inch, it's tying into a 12-inch T with an 8-inch into a crossing with a 12. But we're also then looking to move south from 16th to 17th Street. So we'll continue to coordinate daily and hope that this traffic disruption is going to be limited in scope for its inconvenience. And we appreciate our neighbors and community members who are visiting with their patients as we do this. But we will be improving really the water quality and the pressure being delivered to these businesses. And we're grateful to our city staff and our contractors who are able to do this and keep access to the impacted businesses, keep access to those locations open. You may have seen this as well, but we have our 7th Street from Cedar Street to Cherry, our street rehabilitation project underway. As you know, we have, in much what we discussed in our utility funds for water and wastewater, with our street fund, we have maintenance, which goes into our street fund, but then we have our new construction or large geometric improvements, which are capital improvements. So what this is dealing with is our pavement preservation and maintenance. And we have allocated $234,105 this year. We budgeted more than that, so we don't know how that's going to come in. So we had originally budgeted for $300,000, and we were able to get the street projects done that we needed to get done for a less amount. And we are breaking it down into 2 phases: the chip seal for $121,000 and the mill and overlay for $112,600. And what we have going on here is a full street width, done 1 lane at a time, mill and overlay. And this total project is for this and the other streets on the list is $112,000. Citywide cleanup expenses. This was requested during our June 4th City Commission meeting, and what we have here, and I thank DJ and our administrative professional Lisa Boris for compiling these numbers for us. But we have a spring and a fall cleanup, and you can see that we're really delivering a pretty good service to the community for, a really affordable amount, especially when you're looking at getting rid of tires. And you'll notice that when we do our spraying, we do not incur transfer station fees, as the county, when we partner with that, helps offset that. And so we do pay that transfer station fee in the fall. And then this is our 24 and our spring of 25. And you can tell that when our tonnage goes up, obviously that's directly tied to our transfer station.
That's a lot of tires.
Yeah, so it's like, wow.
Which is better than them ending up in the Meridazine, which is often what happens. We want to welcome our new hires here. Over the past month, we have Jacob Robinson, our newest police officer, as well as his colleague Colton Cox. And then we've added employees for Public Works. We have our maintenance worker in the Streets Department, and that's Stephen Rose. And we have Mason Snook, who is our newest maintenance employee for our Parks Department. So we want to welcome Jacob, Colton, Mason, and Stephen. We got some upcoming events around the community. We have our Chamber After Hours at Primetime Grill on June 12th at 5. We have Murder on the Disoriented Express, June 13th at 6:30, and there are still tickets available for that, and you can access those through the OMA website. We have our blood drive on June 14th, and then we have the OU Theater Summer Academy kicking off the Memorial Auditorium June 16th through the 21st. So if you're able to participate in any of these activities, we encourage you to do so. Want to include some additional highlights. We have passed 10,000 followers on Facebook, I think due in large part to the timing of the zip trip and the missing in action drone that Sarah Stoffer in Main Street was able to retrieve. Kind of Sarah saving the day. And the Fox News 4 crediting and highlighting that for us. So we did post numerous pics there for this high water mark and received over 900 reactions and 452 shares. So we're grateful that we gained all that success and we didn't have an overtop. So that's always good. Additional highlights include our fire department had 166 calls. Our human resource department conducted 100 interviews, and that's year to date. We have our utility electric distribution addressing some outages for Tuesday's storm that rolled through. And then as you can see, Public Works was running around the clock, monitoring not only the level and the floodgates, but also our wells, as they were, or not our wells, but our pumps that take from the stormwater on our side of the levee and pump it up and over and into the river on the other side of the levee. We encourage anyone who is looking for employment opportunities to consider serving their community. We have the property improvement partner, water reclamation facility apprentice. So anyone who is a high school student, a college student, an adult even, who is curious about wastewater and being a wastewater employee to consider applying for this apprentice position. We have a facility maintenance worker in our building maintenance department that's also open. And we have completed interviews just today for the communications and outreach coordinator. And we have the OMA advisory board coming up next week on June 17th at noon at the OMA mezzanine area. And here is our tentative schedule for our June 18th City Commission agenda. And if you have no questions for myself or a member of our team, that concludes Manager comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to comments by the governing body. We'll start with Commissioner Crowley,
I have no comments.
Commissioner Kaler,
Not at this time.
Commissioner Skidmore, Mayor Pro Tem Clayton.
None at this time.
Okay, we'll move, oh, I have none either. We'll move on to announcements. We have a June 18th City Commission meeting at 10 a.m. here at City Hall. June 25th, 4 p.m. here at City Hall. July 2nd at 7 p.m. here at City Hall, and July 9th City Commission meeting at 4 p.m. here at City Hall. And seeing no other business before us, I will adjourn.